Hi there, Lynn Cox here, clinical hypnotherapist. I work with women who have escaped domestic violence relationships, help them recover from some of those lingering impacts, and also women who've experienced childhood abuse. So, I'm answering some common questions. The one I'm talking about today, this is quite common, quite a common experience, and unfortunately, it is this that tends to get people continuing to be on in a cycle. And it's to the effect of, why do I feel sad or depressed or even like I miss him, even though I know I had to escape? So, you've heard me talk a lot about the logical versus emotional mind. We have both of those, they work together. A very simple way to break it down is logic is our, executive functioning part of our mind. That's the I know what day it is, I'm here, I'm talking through this live camera. The emotional is the more of the subconscious. And that's where beliefs, that's where actually everything is recorded, and also where beliefs get formed. So this, why do I feel sad, depressed, or even like I miss somebody, even somebody who is abusive and violent to you? Because you're human. That's a very quick answer. Because you're human. Because that's not an easy experience to go through. It's a very horrible experience to go through. To be with somebody who you are intimate with, in a relationship with, and experience any kind of abuse. And I'm talking more about physical abuse here. That's more the point of this conversation, because you really do need to be able to get out and not go back. Um, so we're humans, we have emotions. You know, a lot of people feel, well, I'll call it like the fog of war type of experience. So that's the confusion caused by the chaos or war of battle, right? Because that's really what's happening when people are in those situations. They are extremely discombobulating, and that's to say it lightly. They are very traumatizing, and so you can find yourself in that fog of war. It's difficult to make sense of things. And very likely, too, there's all sorts of different statistics on how many times a woman will, leave an abusive and violent partner and go back and leave and go back and leave and go back. I should have looked at this before I came on to this video. But in my experience, my personal experience, was which I'm quite open about, which is also one of the reasons why I do this work, I probably went through that cycle 4 or 5 times. And it was with those common things. Oh, I miss him. I'm confused. Oh, he's apologized. Oh, focusing in on the on the great aspects of the human. Because here's another truth: there's never 100% evil and 100% good. That's an immature way of looking at life and looking at humans. So, unfortunately, women who tend to be in a domestic violence relationship will start to tend to focus in on the positive aspects of the personality, or the memories of love and things like that. And I think that this term has been, I've heard this term now a lot, and a lot of people talk about this trauma bonding. I'm going to read a quick definition here. This is just helpful for some understanding. Trauma bonding is a psychological response to abuse. The person experiencing abuse may develop sympathy for the abusive person, which becomes reinforced by cycles of abuse, followed by remorse. Um, I can speak to that. I've also seen that with other people. The person who I was in a relationship with, who was violent with me, was quite masterful at pulling on my heartstrings of experiencing abandonment and abuse as a young person. So whether or not that happened, I'm not sure. I don't need to know, but it was quite an effective manipulative tactic, because I'd also experienced abuse as a child. He was aware of that fact too, so very likely it could have been a methodical approach. Trauma bonding, though, I feel like, and I was just talking to somebody about this last night. I think it's too light of a term to look at it, to use that terminology when you're talking about being in a relationship or having been in a relationship with a violent person. Trauma bonding language is really impactful, and in my opinion, it really makes light of how significantly, sorry, my doorbell just rang, how significantly impactful that is. So I'm just sending a note here. Um, okay, so let's get back to this. So so basically it's making too light of it, essentially. It is more, you want to look at that like the Stockholm syndrome. That's a little more impactful. But the fact of the matter is we are human, and if you ever find yourself asking yourself those questions, you're probably in the fog of war, and you really need to get to a point where you are a different person. And this is going to be a little bit tough for some people to hear, but I wasn't able to extricate myself from that situation until, in recovery circles, they call it, rock bottom. And the rock bottom was being, strangled up against a wall. And that was the point where I actually had the harsh realization that if this continues on, he may kill me. Like, let's be honest about it. And I also posted up an article from a woman, and it was very interesting. This woman works with, she raises money to raise awareness of domestic violence. She had been in a violent situation herself, and she goes through this article about this common question that everybody asks. Can he change? And she goes through a few things and a few examples. But here's the thing too: if it were just fear that would keep us from doing something that's bad for ourselves, I'll give the example of smoking. There's a lot of fear marketing advertising campaigns around stopping smoking, and they're typically not effective. If that was going to do it, what really has to happen is you have to get a different perspective of yourself, because there is something in you that would be pulled back into a situation like that. And and so that's what has to change. So you have to realize that you're going to be going through emotions. There's going to be ups and downs. There's this fog of war, but you somehow have to, until you feel that change in your whole perspective of who you are, you somehow have to trick yourself in a way to have enough respect or love, or or prioritize your life enough to at least get through the fog of war stage. And then you can start to do some other healing modalities. So if you find yourself asking, why am I feeling this way? This is the other thing too. We're very impatient in this culture, and we're not as comfortable with kind of riding the waves of emotions. So there's a fog of war, that's the confusion. And then there's going to be all sorts of changes as you go through the stages of grief and regret and anger. And it's not just a linear path. I would more compare it to, swirls and waves. And and many of us are not. We want it to be over like that. We want to stop feeling so bad. And unfortunately, in this particular type of situation, it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea to go back and keep going back. These types of things are progressive. I haven't done much research on how many um, men who've been violent actually change, but there are some pretty striking examples and statistics in this particular Medium article. And I'm going to do a little bit more research and share that, because the best time to have been out in a way would have been yesterday, last week, last year, last month. The next best time is absolutely now. And you're going to have to ride through the emotions of that if you want to see something change. If you understand that you've got to become somebody different. You have to have an entirely different perspective of yourself, and that's when work like this comes in quite handy, like RTT, hypnotherapy. That's where you can get at what's the root of this, what was in me, what was about me, my belief systems that would even have me engaged in a situation like that. There is a level of self responsibility. I know that that's probably not a popular thing to say. That was the only thing that I found worked for me, and I see it work for other clients in changing their entire perspective of who they are. Now, that sounds big because you're still the same person, but there are these foundational beliefs um, that ever compel, and as subconscious level compel people to be in those situations. That's what eventually has to change to stop that repetitive cycle. So the emotions, they're going to come in waves. There's going to be ups and downs like a swirl, and that's just something you need to get comfortable with. And one way you can do that is just remind yourself that if you really want to be here and if you really don't want to risk your life, um, that you're going to need to probably go through that. It doesn't have to be as long and painful as some may think it is. When people say it needs to take time. When I finally had that realization, it was actually well, relatively speaking, quite quick. I was in my 30s, and I'd been kind of traveling along that path for my entire life up until that point. So from that perspective, it was relatively quick, and it absolutely can be done. So I hope everybody's doing well out there, and I'll be on again soon. Bye for now.